Hello, everyone. I'm Avi Kravitz. Amid all the doom in the diamond industry, jewelry sales are growing at a substantial pace. We've spoken a lot about the luxury houses and how the LVMHs and Richemont and Kerings of the world are doing so well with their jewelry, and that jewelry has been the standout category for them. But growth seems to be extending beyond the high end. We've seen growth across markets, including jewelers in the United States, China, and India during the latest quarter. And today, I want to focus on India because there's a company that tends to fly a little bit under the radar in the global diamond discussion, but it's arguably the fastest growing jewelry company in the world, and that is Titan Company. Titan is part of the Tata Group, one of the major conglomerates in India, and it is India's largest branded jewelry company with brands such as Tanishq, Carat Lane, and Mia in its portfolio. And it lived up to that growth expectation in the fiscal first quarter ending June 30th, with group revenue up 29% year on year to 215 billion rupee, that's around $2.3 billion, and net profit increasing 63% to 18 billion rupee, or around $186 million. Now think about those numbers for a second. In terms of revenue, it's about on par with Signet Jewelers, the largest jewelry business in the United States, and it's certainly more profitable. But for our purposes, we ask the question, is Titan a reflection of or an exception in India's jewelry landscape? For context, 2 or 3 years ago, India was billed as the growth market for natural diamond jewelry, overtaking China as the second largest market after the United States. And we saw this sort of promise of expansion. New brands were coming in, and the other conglomerates were considering entering the jewelry space. Now, that story has developed, but it's also gone a little quieter more recently. But India is still arguably the most prospective growth market for diamond jewelry. That said, India's consumer spending is maturing. A report published in May by Deloitte India suggested there's a shift to value and experiences among Indian consumers, and households are becoming more discerning about spending. And spending has weakened in recent months, according to government data. Sounds familiar, right? So perhaps Titan's consistent double-digit growth reflects an excellence in execution at the company, as well as its already established dominance in the domestic market. But that is an impressive growth rate that it consistently reports. And one suspects that the continued expansion of India's middle-income bracket is also playing a role, and Titan is able to capitalize on that given its position in the market. Now, one interesting point in Titan's quarterly report suggests that that may be the case. The company saw growth in both the number of buyers and the average ticket size during the period. Demand is being driven by more customers spending more per purchase rather than price increases alone, which is what we're seeing in other markets. We've been talking about growth in the United States and in Greater China driven by a shift to higher price points compensating for a drop in transaction volume. The higher price points in the US and China are influenced by inflation, higher gold prices, the K economy, strength in the jewelry high-end, etc. So demand in real terms is down as fewer people are buying, but they're buying at higher average prices, which is lifting the sales number. If Titan's reporting is anything to go by, it doesn't seem that that's the case in India, despite reports of weaker consumer sentiment. And by the way, last week was the India International Jewelry Show in Mumbai, which is largely a domestic show, the largest and most important on the Indian jewelry trade show calendar, and it's an opportunity for retailers across India to see goods, to see new designs and collections, and buy to full inventory ahead of the important Diwali festival coming up in November and the subsequent wedding season. Now, show organizers reported over 50,000 buyers in attendance over the 6-day event, and about 1 trillion rupee, that's about $12 billion worth of business conducted at the show. I'm not quite sure how they'd measure that, but we'll take their word for it. Either way, there's every reason to be optimistic about jewelry consumption in India, which brings us back to Titan Company, because it is increasingly the bellwether for the market in India. It's our strongest data point that we have about retail jewelry there. And a few points to note from Titan's results. Firstly, growth came despite high gold prices. In fact, Titan attributed the quarter's strength partly to a relatively stable gold price environment. Gold prices have stabilized at substantially higher levels than a year ago. That consumers are still buying at those levels is very encouraging. Secondly, demand was broad across plain and studded jewelry. Both categories recorded strong growth, suggesting consumers have not simply shifted toward gold-heavy products at the expense of diamond and gem-set jewelry. Remember, India is very much gold-centric. Consumers are very savvy about the gold purchases, not only for jewelry purposes, but also for investment. But we saw growth also in diamond and gemstone jewelry. Another takeaway is that India's jewelry market remains strongly occasion-driven. Festive buying was an important catalyst for sales during the quarter, reinforcing the continued importance of cultural occasions to jewelry consumption there. And keep that in mind as Diwali approaches. And finally, India's jewelry brands are finding growth beyond their domestic market. Titan's Tanishq brand reported particularly strong traction in North America. It's been expanding there, opening new stores in the United States, and the company has seen growth in the Gulf as well, pointing to an expanding international opportunity for Indian jewelry brands. And that's both catering to the Indian diaspora and through more contemporary designs suitable for the more Western and Middle Eastern audience. And we're seeing more of that in the wholesale and manufacturing sector as well. Diamond factories have for some time now been pivoting to jewelry for value add in their exports and sales. Also be aware that Titan is making moves in other markets, acquiring 2/3 of Dubai-based Damas Jewelry last year with an option for full ownership by 2029. So my conclusion is that Titan's story gives us a glimpse into India's jewelry industry growth, but I also think it's exceptional. We're not seeing 30% growth across the board in India as we've seen in Titan's revenue time and time again. In fact, while we look at Titan as somewhat of a reflection of the Indian retail jewelry market, the company's stature is growing on a global level in terms of the diamond and jewelry industry. It's a company we need to keep an eye on in terms of its strategy, in terms of learning from its strategy, its branding, its value proposition, and its own value and expansion both in India and abroad. I'd love to hear your thoughts about Titan. What has your experience been with the company? Is Titan an outlier in India, in the jewelry market as a whole? What do you learn from the company's branding strategy, etc.? So leave a comment and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. And so that's your Diamond Minutes. I'm Avi Kravitz. I'll see you next time.